Hello! Well, now that you know all about the first types of hooks, the action hooks, it's time to talk about filters. Unlike action hooks that don't return any value to the function that calls them, the whole point of a filter function is to get a value and return that value, but in a modified format, or in other words, in a filtered format. This is why they are given this name, filters, okay? Like action hooks, filters work through a pair of functions that work together. The first of these functions is apply filters, and the other is called add filter. The apply filters function is the one that defines a filter within WordPress code. So let's talk about it first, but in a very brief way because we're going to come back to it at the end of the course. Well, for this, I will show the example of the content function, something I mentioned earlier in this course. If we open up the post template.php file inside the WP includes folder, here near line 243, at least here in my installation, you have the exact part of the code where WordPress defines the content function. Actually, as you can see, it is just a wrapper function for another one called get the content. And it's actually used to echo out the result of get the content, as you can see here in this code. But notice something interesting here. Before echoing out the value of the content variable, WordPress is passing this value to the apply filters function right here. And this is where the filter is being defined, right? So most filters get at least two parameters. The first is the name of the filter. In this case, it is called the underscore content, or simply the content. And the second is the value to be filtered out. In this specific case, WordPress is letting us filter the value of the content variable itself. At the end of the story, since what comes here inside this variable is everything we add there in the post editor or the page editor, if that's the case, this code here in practice, it is allowing us to filter the post content itself, okay? You can pass more than one argument to be filtered here. For example, at the end of the function getBodyClass, which defines the list of classes that appear in the body element of all WordPress pages, here about line 836, you have a filter whose name is body underscore class. It can take two arguments. Both are arrays in this case, as you can see here. The second function that controls the filters is add underscore filter. This function is for you to modify the value of the filter. To make things easier for you, let's take an example. Once again, we will be going here to the functions.php file. And I will paste a ready-made piece of code. Well, the add filter function accepts at least two parameters. The first one is the name of the filter. In the case of the content filter, we saw that the name is this one, the underscore content. So this name here is the same one that we pass to the apply filters, okay? And the second parameter, as ever, is a callback function. In this case, I created a callback function here called modify underscore content, and I passed its name here. Of course, I could reverse this order here too, okay? So the callback can be anywhere as long as the filter can see it. I already covered this in the previous lecture, so it is the same thing in this case, okay? The most important thing about this callback function is its return. In this case, what I'm saying here is that the callback will receive a value, which I called content, but it could be whatever, for example. And then inside this function, I will modify the value of this variable and return it, but now modified, right? To make it more obvious, I could write this function in a different way, like this, for example. That is, here I am getting the initial value of the filter. I am calling it here content, but it could have another name, okay? Then here inside the callback, I am assigning a new value to this starting value. I'm saying that it will get its own value that will be concatenated with this string here. Then down here, I'm returning the new value. So I return it here again, now filtered out, all right? That's why this is called a filter, because I get the original value here as a parameter, then I modify it here inside the callback function, and then I return it with whatever modification it has, alright? So let's see if it works. Now if I reload the hello world post, I've got here the original value of the post and the string that I added. Great, isn't it? Now I'm talking about a filter that takes only one parameter. Let me give you an example of a filter with two or more parameters. For example, the body class filter, which I mentioned last time. I could have something like this to add a new class to the body element of all posts. Notice that I'm passing two parameters here. But if I want to work with these two parameters in the callback, I have to necessarily specify that here in the fourth parameter of the add filter. That's why I have this number 2 here, okay? The third parameter is always the priority of the callback function in this filter. And it works pretty much like the priority of the action hooks. Now, the fourth parameter is very important, okay? Because if I ignore this here, look what will happen. So I have this error here on the screen. It says that the filter was expecting 2 arguments, but I just passed 1. That's because I didn't mention here how many parameters I'm giving to the function. Now let me come back here. If I inspect this page again, let me inspect here. Here in the body, I see here the name of the class I passed to the filter, along with all the other that the getBodyClass function automatically generates for me. Here's my class. One interesting thing is that you don't have to pass all the arguments if you don't want to. For example, I could simplify this filter like this. That is, I'm not using this second argument here. Or also like this. Here I'm passing the value of the second parameter with the value of no, and this can be very useful in some situations. Another interesting fact, you should, whenever possible, repeat the name of the filter arguments in the callback function. You don't have to do this, but it helps a lot to make your code more consistent. So here I'm using the same names that the filter defines for me. If I look here, the names are the same. Alright? To close this subject, 2 curiosities. WordPress divides some filter groups in 2. In the first group are those that are applied to information that is read from the database first and then filtered out. And in the second group are those filters that are first applied to some information and later sent to the database. An example from this first group is the content filter itself, because it acts over information that already exists in the database. I mean, you're actually modifying information that already exists and is already stored somewhere in the database. Now, there is a filter called Content Save Pre. This allows you to filter the post content, but before it goes into the database. Let me give you an example. For example, this function here, it could be used to replace all line breaks in the post content with closing and opening paragraph tags. And this will be done before the post is saved. The second curiosity is this. WordPress has almost 2,000 filters. That's a lot of them. How do I know which filter I should use and at what point? For example, how do I guess there is a filter called BodyClass that adds class names to the HTML body? Well, you can't guess. A good starting point is the WordPress core itself. Over time, you'll start to get used to visiting the core files to see how to use the functions. And as you do this, you'll notice that almost always the result of a function can be filtered out. One good indication is the existence of variables that return their value with the use of apply filters. It's that simple. Another thing that helps is the WordPress docs. This page here that I'm going to show you now, it has a good number of filters that you can use, all divided into categories. Of course, I'll leave this link for you as a reference, okay? Well, I guess that's it. In the next lesson, finally, we'll start creating our plugins. So, see you there.